went in. Okay, what's the password again?
How do we get on the internet here? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just.
So we
Oh, okay. Thanks. I wonder if it's Oh, good. Okay. Okay. So is it working?
got,
We've got one at that end too, or just?
is, Laura Mikulski, the
Yeah,
current
is
council
that
liaison.
Laura's?
Yeah, she's not coming tonight, though.
Thank you.
Coming tonight? Okay.
Okay. Is there anyone else that we know is going to be absent from the board tonight?
Just Councilmember Mikulski and Board Member Fiore. I've not heard from Board Member Monk.
Okay, yeah, that's the only other one that we would have. He would have been here his first meeting. Was it?
Mm-hmm. I'm wrong.
Well, let's give him another minute and then we'll get started. No, it's 4. All right, it's 7:05. Board Member Monk is still not with us, so let's go ahead and get started. We don't want to keep anyone waiting any longer. This is a meeting of the City of Ferndale's Board of Zoning Appeals on September 17th, 2024. The meeting will come to order at 7:05 p.m. The Board of Zoning Appeals is a quasi-judicial body authorized by Section 24-421 of the City of Ferndale's Code of Ordinances. The BZA is a body of limited powers. We are restricted by the City of Ferndale zoning ordinance and by Michigan law. The BZA is authorized to interpret the zoning ordinance and the zoning map, to hear and decide appeals made by administrative officials or bodies charged with enforcing the ordinance, and to analyze variance requests as permitted under the ordinance. The BZA does not have the power or authority to amend the zoning ordinance or to disregard its provisions or to rezone parcels of land. Changes in the ordinance must originate with City Council, not with the BZA. We have Council Member Liaison Mikulski that we know is going to be absent. We also, looks like Board Member Nick Monk is not going to be with us today either. Let's see, do we have a motion to excuse the absences of these absent board members? Moved by Palmer, seconded by Klosinski. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries and those absent board members are excused.
I think we have to do roll call too first.
Yeah, I was about to go to roll
Okay,
call with you,
perfect.
Christine. So let's do roll call now that we've excused the absence of people who aren't here.
Okay, Klavansky,
Present.
Palmer,
Here.
Williamson,
Here.
Lozinski,
Here.
Azar. Here.
All right, we have 5 members present, which means there are enough members present to approve or deny a variance request if brought up on motion. We have the agenda in front of everyone. Does anyone have any proposed changes or revisions to the agenda? Seeing none, I entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So move.
Moved by Palmer,
Support.
support by Azar. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. The agenda is approved. That moves us on to item number 3, which is approval of the minutes. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes from the November 21st, 2023 BZA meeting, which is our last meeting almost a year ago at this point?
There's a typo.
There's a typo. All right, where is it?
Very sorry. I had it and I don't know where it went.
That's okay. Why
But
don't
it
we,
was just a, I'm sure it was a typo.
okay, was there any substantive issues that anyone identified with the minutes from the November 21st, 2023 meeting? Okay, in that case, I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the November 21st, 2023 meeting, subject to correction of any typos that may exist in that set of minutes.
Move to approve the minutes from November 21st with typo clear up.
Right, moved by Azar,
I'll second it.
support by Palmer. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. Those minutes are approved, subject to the potential correction of any typos. So we skipped over item number 1A, which is introduction of the new Board of Zoning Appeals member, Jared Klavansky. And Board Member Klavansky, this is your first meeting. You want to take a minute to introduce yourself?
Sure, yeah. My name is Jared Klavansky. I've been living in Ferndale for about 2 years now, but living in Michigan for 9. My day job, I'm an electrical engineer at Nissan, but I studied mechanical engineering and recently kind of gotten more interested in city planning and zoning. So excited to be on the board. Thanks.
Welcome.
Well, welcome to the board, Board Member Klavansky, and we're going to appreciate having your input. This to item number 4, call to audience. At this point, if there's any member of the audience that would like to address the BZA for any reason, other than reasons that are related to existing agenda items, now's your opportunity to do so. All right, seeing none, we'll move on past item 4 to item 5, the regular agenda. First item up on our regular agenda is consideration of 4-dimensional variances at 2000 West 8 Mile Road. I understand that the applicant proposes 2 variances for primary frontage and secondary frontage build-to lines, which under our current iteration of the zoning ordinance is a 0 to 15-foot requirement build-to. This is a form-based code that applies across most of the commercial properties and also in the light industrial and industrial regions as well, at least right now. There is another variance request to allow surface parking between a building and frontage, which is currently not permitted under our ordinance, and a 4th variance request to allow 6 pedestrian entrances instead of, I believe, 8 entrances on the east side of the building, I believe. These are all requirements that are included in section 24-103 of the zoning ordinance. BZA members that have been on the board for a few years may recall that a similar situation came before the board in 2022 for the industrial property located at 965 Wanda. Kyle, is there anything you'd like to add for staff?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Good evening, board members. And Chair Williamson, you described that very well. I just want to go through a few slides here and just touch on a few things in the staff report. Here is a photo of the existing conditions of the site, just to familiarize everybody listening. It's a pretty large piece of property in the southwest corner of the city. So this is the very wooded area that is at 8 Mile and Pinecrest. So the building does have 8 Mile frontage. This is the city limit, this north-south line here on the left. So this is actually Royal Oak Township, just on the west side of it. To the north, you'll see the bottom part of Ferndale High School. So the high school is just out of frame here. It is buffered quite heavily by the woods. And we do have Ferndale residential on the east. And of course, we have 8 Mile down here, which is Detroit here on the south side. This is the proposed site plan, so this is really why we're here tonight. I'd like to note that the applicant did receive site plan approval in July of 2019 for what is essentially this, or at least a very similar product to this. I can let them talk about any major differences. They did approve, or they received approval for this plan at that time, but they did not go through with it. The site plan did expire, which, you know, of course happens, but in an interesting twist, at the next month, the city council approved form-based regulations, which are very different than the original plan for which they were approved back in 2019. So this plan, which again is similar to what was previously approved in 2019, shows a phased development. So you can see the existing building here on the west side with the crosshatch outline. There's a proposed connector building here in the middle, along with 2 phases of 150,000 square foot warehousing facilities. So these are proposed to be roughly in line with the existing building, and as much away possible from 8 Mile and from Pinecrest. So they have an existing curb cut, which is proposed to navigate around the property. And I can let them speak more to the design, but I just want to get this image in your head of, you've got the existing building. What's proposed is essentially a large warehousing expansion in line with the existing building. So we're here tonight because of the build to, among 2 other items. So the build to requirement is essentially the opposite of a setback in that it is requiring buildings to be built up to 0 to 15 feet from the lot line, which would cause a dramatically different layout of this site plan if they were going to follow it. This is an illustration just to show what we're talking about, especially on a site this large with the scaling 15 feet maximum is not very far from 8 Mile. So, of course, this is a crude drawing, it's not to scale, but the build-to line as required for them to put their expansion up to is that red line along the bottom, whereas the proposed variance that they're seeking would allow them to build it at the yellow line, which is roughly in line with the existing building. For the secondary frontage, here's a similar image showing how close it would be to these residences on Pinecrest if they were beholden to the build-to line, along with the proposed variance, which allows them to build a little bit further back. I know we've talked about this before, even with the other case of, you know, so why do we have this build-to line? I mean, frankly, I do think it works in the main industrial districts of the city. If you look at a zoning map, we've got our light industrial district and our heavy industrial district. They're in 2 very specific, conspicuous locations, and especially the light industrial, it's very built out with a lot of buildings up to the road. So a lot of buildings are either in compliance or roughly in compliance, and I do think a new build following those regulations would fit in. But in these cases where we have these large scale expansions on these huge parcels, which are frankly pretty rare in our city, the ordinance does not speak to that very well. So we arrive at situations like this variance for which we're here tonight. The other 2 items are you can't have parking between the frontage and the building, which they do propose here on the east side, and the number of pedestrian entrances, which again could be difficult for a secured industrial site to have public-facing entrances. They were able to provide, I think, 6 of them throughout the building. That's on the 8 Mile side only, to be clear. So they're seeking a variance of, I believe, 2 for that. that is what I have in terms of an update. I'd be happy to let the client speak. I don't know who's representing the team. They've got a lot of people here. So whoever wants to come up and speak, describe, kind of your intentions with the variance, your rationale for the variance, anything like that.
Great, thank you very much, Kyle.
Good
Welcome.
evening. Scott Kreitzer, I'm with JB Donaldson Company. I represent the owner, Detroit Axle. We are at 37610 Hills Tech Drive in Farmington Hills. We've been working on this project for quite some time with Detroit Axle. It kind of went away for a few years and came back to light. Their business is expanding at leaps and bounds, and he's purchased this property from, I don't know if it was Hayes Lemerans or who they got it from, but they have purchased the property. It has its own challenges, the property does itself, and I'm sure the city's well aware of the challenges that are on this piece of property. We feel that how we put the facility up here with it lining up with the existing facility actually works better for the city than trying to follow the ordinance of 15-foot setback off of 8 Mile Road. There's trees out in the front out at 8 Mile that are roughly 250 years old, I think, Mike. Yeah, I think we looked at that. We feel that we should stay back behind those. There's some younger trees out back that we can definitely remove in lieu of those 8 Mile trees. The existing curb cut, we are wanting to reutilize that for the truck traffic to go around the building and not have to go to MDOT to get a curb cut down close to Pinecrest for all of the semi-traffic. The parking on the east side of the building there's actually a parking lot there right now that is, I'm not going to call it legacy, but it was there for the Hayes buildings. We feel that gives us a nice buffer to the residents to the east side, on the east side of Pinecrest they are. There'd be landscaping and such along there also. I mean, Detroit Axle is wanting to make this look and feel as warm as possible to the residents, that's for sure. We are buffered by the trees to the north from the high school. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it there. We're probably a good 10 acres from there. So the project is phased. You can see that it's $150,000 the first phase, $150,000 the second phase. In the first phase, we're going to put the truck docks in like it shows on the northwest corner of the new building, and rework his existing building with the connector to add some more truck wells for his incoming and outbound product. We have the bicycle racks and the indoor bike rack storage provided inside the new facility. The facade would match what the ordinances are for the township. And with the expansion, it would be a different material for the expansion. It would be a, what they call them, an IMP panel, which is a insulated metal panel that would be able to be removed when we do the expansion. And when we do that expansion, it would become a all precast building at that point. Much like you see, there's a few of them down 8 Mile, just to the west of this building. The height, we fit the requirements of the height, so we're not asking for any variances there. I believe we are asking for the doors, which is correct. This is a warehouse. Your ordinance calls for a door every 75 feet. There's no reason for us to have them for fire exits or anything. We propose to remove one door per 150,000 feet, so we're removing 2 doors. We've met the glass requirement on the south side of the building along 8 Mile, which is our frontage. We are asking that the glass requirement on the east side of the building be looked at, because again, it's a warehouse. There's no We're doing nothing. We may have some high punched windows along there just for some natural light. But I believe the ordinance is 20%, 10% on the east, 10%, pardon me, on the secondary frontage. We would definitely ask for the relief on the first phase, since seeing as how the wall will be removed and the new precast wall would be the next 150 or 300 feet over from that point. We have also installed, from meeting with the fire marshal, he's looking for a temporary access for fire trucks along the first phase, which is the gravel drive that you see that we have just to the east of the first phase line there. That will be removed, obviously, when we do the second phase, but until then, it will be there and maintained for fire truck access.
Hey, thank you for the detailed explanation. I do want to clarify that for today, we're looking at the four variance requests that are set forth in the agenda and with the staff report. We do have a public notice requirement, so we can't add on an additional variance request that has not been properly publicly noticed.
And that's the glass?
That's the glass. So that's one that you'll probably want to, if you're seeing that that's going to be an issue at this point, you probably want to talk to Christine or Kyle and get that one noticed back up for another variance, but we can't address that one today.
Yeah, my understanding with the team is that the glass was not going to be an issue for the final phase 2 of the project, and that's really all we're looking at here. So my understanding is that fenestration was not an issue for this project at all.
Okay. Have you, has this project been in for site plan review already to Planning Commission?
No, we're turning in probably Friday.
Okay, so you're coming to go into Planning Commission, hopefully with some variances already in
Right,
hand.
that's right, yeah.
That makes sense. All right, I am going to open a public hearing on this matter at 7:24 p.m. If there's anyone from the public that would like to make any statements relating to this project, now's your opportunity. Kyle, did the city receive any feedback in the form of emails or telephone calls, any other communications project and these variance requests?
No, I haven't heard anything, and frankly, I sent out a lot of letters. So no, we haven't heard anything. Because it's on 8 Mile, we actually did quite a bit of mailings in Detroit, which is a little unusual for us, but we sent them all out.
Okay, thank you. In that case, we'll close the public hearing at 7:24 p.m. And I now want to give the board members an opportunity to ask any questions that you might want to ask to the applicant or to city staff.
Through the chair, when I went by there, and I go by there probably every day because I take that as a route, but I noticed that there were at least 2 curb cuts on Pinecrest already, maybe 3?
On Pinecrest.
And Pinecrest.
Yeah, we don't plan on using them.
Right, I know, but they're there. And you have a 6-foot fence. Are you keeping the 6-foot fence?
There will be a fence along Pinecrest.
There will, okay. And the curb cut that you suggested is next to the building right now, well, a little further down from the building. Is that what the existing building?
There's a curb cut at the existing building.
Yeah.
There's one just to the east of that, and then there's another one down by Pinecrest.
Oh, there's one by, okay.
Yeah,
Well, I must
that's
have
our truck access, is the one by Pinecrest.
Gotcha. And so in the version that I'm seeing here now, and somebody mentioned it, I apologize, I don't remember who, but the east side is going to be a driveway, but you're showing also parking, and somebody said that it wasn't allowed to have parking like that?
In frontage. This is secondary frontage.
Gotcha.
And
So we have it out in front of Detroit Axle, I know that, there's parking
the
out
current
there.
building right now has parking in front of it, and that will remain.
Yeah.
And the next, if you look to the east, just to the east is the detention pond. And then there's the trees before the driveway. And then after the driveway, is just open grass.
But as it shows there, it's a driveway.
That's
Along that
that's the current curb cut. We're using that current curb cut to get up around the building with our truck route, and we would put parking on that side of the building.
Okay, then I must have misunderstood somebody that said that on the east side you couldn't do parking, which didn't make sense to me, so that's why.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but the frontage, there's an ordinance against parking on the frontage, but this is secondary frontage also.
No, I'm talking about what you're proposing with parking on the east side of the building on the Pinecrest Run, where the trucks are going through, you're showing parking, but I thought I heard somebody say that we couldn't do east side parking. Maybe I misunderstood.
No, that is correct. I mean, the ordinance says no parking between the building and frontage. It doesn't specify primary or secondary frontage. Like everything else specifies one or the other, but this just says no parking between building and frontage. So, I mean, we took the more extreme approach to assume that meant both.
Pinecrest is considered a frontage because it's a secondary frontage?
Yeah, it's definitely a secondary frontage.
So those parking spaces are not going to be?
Well,
I mean, that's
one
one of the
of
things they're seeking a variance for.
It's one-
I just wanted to make sure.
Yep,
That's all.
that's the,
Okay, yeah.
That's one of the 4 items.
and as far as the proposal for treatment of that lengthy, it's almost like a driveway and a parking lot combined, a real skinny parking lot that's also a driveway running up the side of the building there. What's the plan for the outside portion of that along the frontage? Is there going to be added landscaping? Is there going to be a knee wall, anything along that far east side?
It would be
of the lot
landscaped.
there?
Landscaped with a fence,
Okay, and how high will the fence be?
6-foot fence,
Oh, a 6-foot fence all along the outer edge of the parking area.
like it has right now.
Yeah, well, that's almost a Pinecrest.
Yep, almost Pinecrest, yes, exactly, yeah. Inside of that fence line would be landscaping.
Okay, I see what you're saying now. Existing fence, it's along the sidewalk.
Right,
Remain.
we would be inside of that.
Yeah, right.
There's sidewalk?
Well, it goes up, at least for part of it.
I've
think
cleaned that
so.
area.
Yeah, I don't
Cleaned
think
up
there's any.
Ferndale, and I don't,
It's on the east side of Pinecrest. Is the sidewalk.
right, but not on the west side, right.
School sometime.
Through the chair, I believe the city actually did put in a sidewalk on the west side through a TAP grant within the past year. That's my understanding. So
Oh, I
believe there
haven't
is,
seen
my understanding is there is a sidewalk on the west side of Pinecrest.
And it's covered with overgrowth. I can't see it.
Engineer was just out there, he said it's there.
I was gonna ask that question. Okay. Oh, through the chair, can I, just a couple of questions for staff on the zoning with that? So, okay, so we think there's a sidewalk existing and staying? Okay. Because that was a concern of mine. I was gonna ask if they were gonna be required to put in a sidewalk, but it sounds like we don't need one.
Yeah, I mean, there definitely is a sidewalk on Pinecrest. This does not have a battery.
Like all the way to 8 Mile?
Yes, that is my understanding. And then there is sidewalk, I believe it ends somewhere around here. I don't know if that sounds right to you guys. And the applicant has already,
Your
I
pointer.
can't see what you're pointing at.
oh, sorry. I'm wiggling the mouse, so. It goes from, here, and I believe it terminates somewhere around here. And then there's a sidewalk gap, and the applicant has already, voiced their intention to put in a sidewalk to complete that gap as part of their site plan approval.
Complete. Sidewalks complete.
Correct.
My other question is just related to the zoning in general. You gave the background that in 2019, they had approval, and then we adopted form-based code, which I didn't realize it was that recently. And I know we're contemplating another, we're going to update our code again. So I was just curious if in the new code, if situations like this were contemplated at all differently.
Absolutely. I mean, the Wanda project was very eye-opening for us, and it was definitely something that was in our minds as we've gone through this process. So and again, this is all tentative, and this is in a future plan, and it needs city council approval, so this is all draft. I have to stress that. But we are moving away from the build-to requirement and kind of going to a minimum setback with a maximum front setback. So there's still an intent of a form-based code in the new draft. But for certain, we've sort of pulled out the industrial districts out of the form-based requirements. So they kind of stand on their own. They're a little bit simpler. They don't have all the other form-based requirements that our commercial districts will have. Further, as of right now, and again, this is draft, we do have a footnote that allows the maximum front setback to match an existing building in cases of expansion. So if the draft were approved right now, this would be a different situation, frankly. But again, that's draft.
Yeah,
so.
and we don't know when that will be adopted, but I guess what you're saying is that were they not to go to site plan until that's adopted anyways, they would be facing a very different zoning environment.
Yeah, I would say that's true.
Okay.
To refresh the recollection of board members, the 965 Wanda project was before us on May 10th, 2022. That was a similar situation in which the applicant was also looking for a variance to avoid the 0 to 15-foot build-to line. In that situation, the BZA granted a variance allowing a 246-foot setback as opposed to the 0 to 15 build-to requirement. We also granted a second variance allowing surface parking between the building and the frontage because the 965 Wanda building also had a large parking lot that was pre-existing between the building and the frontage. Their expansion of their building, they also wanted to continue the existing parking lot just as they were continuing along the frontage of the building. We also granted a variance that allowed them about 4 feet off of the required 15-foot parking setback because the pre-existing parking lot at 965 Wanda stopped 11 feet from the sidewalk. And we also granted them a variance that reduced the number of pedestrian entrances because much like this project, it was a very large warehouse building, and having a door every 75 feet on the building, according to the applicant, was more of a security concern for them, and there was real reason that they needed it for purposes of the building. If anyone wants to take a look at those again, you can. I've got a copy if any board members want to see it. That was May 10th, 2022.
And through the chair, I mean, the main difference here is that this property's on a corner, so they have the additional request of the secondary frontage. Also, my recollection is that we denied the parking setback.
On Wanda? Did we deny it? I thought we granted the parking setback. We did deny the parking setback variance. You're right.
Which is a item that is not being requested here tonight.
So there is a jog in the Wanda parking lot. It doesn't quite match up with the pre. Yeah, that one frankly jumped to my mind immediately. Similarly sized, very large parcel with a very large type of property that we got a few of these in the city, but really don't have a substantial parcels that are quite this size and scope. Other questions by board members for the applicant or for city staff?
Through the chair, can I just probe the applicant about that fencing a little bit more? I just kind of want to visualize, like, looking at the site plan, we have like a really nice rendering of the front of the building. It shows no fence there, so is that correct, that there would not be a fence
There won't be a fence on
along
the
the
front.
front? So is the intention for the fencing along the side, is the intention just additional buffer from the residential, or?
Yes. Keep people from just walking across the street into the property, right? It's just, it is a buffer. It's not intended, to have barbed wire or anything like that on it. It's just to help. It would move the traffic towards 8 Mile Road and/or towards north on Pinecrest. Because there is a fence north of this property on Pinecrest.
And presumably that's something you'll have to discuss at the planning board anyways. Okay, planning commission, you guys will be landscaping, fencing. all-
Absolutely.
You can see it.
That fence is going to need to be reworked as it is. There's a large double gate in it right now.
That's one of the saw cuts,
Yeah,
yes.
at the curb cut.
I assume it'll be beautiful permanent fence,
For sure.
the fence.
Right.
Right,
Fencing.
but okay, so to be clear, you're not saying that fence will stay, you're saying a
Oh,
fence.
that fence is pretty ratty.
Yeah, so a fence, a more permanent fence will be.
It's permanent because it's been there for a very
Right,
long
right,
time.
right.
We'll make it nicer.
Yes,
Without,
again,
without
you-
the double gate.
Yeah, so you and the planning commission will determine an appropriate.
Speaking of which, through the chair, you mentioned that there's some issues with the property, and, I mean, I'm a lifetime
Ferndale person.
resident, not
Yeah.
just in Ferndale, I grew up in Oak Park.
Okay.
So I just remember all that, riding.
Hey,
the bike.
Lemoran?
Yeah,
Yeah,
so,
so there's a lot there, a
well,
lot going on
what
there.
I was told is that there's some soil issues, contamination, so,
Your Detroit Axle has spent a lot of money at this so far.
and
They're-
that's.
they're
that's the
cleaning
whole
up your
thing. I want
city.
to thank Detroit Axle for doing that because
The owner right there.
it's huge. It really is huge. Thank you. Just thinking about when we first learned that it was a site of problems, couldn't figure out who was going to take care of it. So
Yeah,
previous owner wasn't.
I know.
That
Been
was,
there long time.
yeah.
Until Detroit Axle purchased it, it sat there for a very long time with nothing. Absolutely.
Please.
Hi, good evening. My name is Mike Mashanish. I'm the CEO of Detroit Axle. In 2019, we were getting ready to build, I think it was 150,000 square foot. But unbeknownst to us, when we purchased the property, that it was considered a RCRA site, which we didn't even know the terminology of what RCRA was. And I think during our planning commission here, that's when one of the board members here told us that it was contaminated. Is that true? That it would have changed the construction or the makeup of the building. So anyways, we had trees in the front that got cut down because you guys wanted it. It was an accident. And we were fined probably like $70,000 for them trees being cut down. It was a terrible mistake by the contractor because he read the plans upside down. And so we put a stop on the project. We had some opportunities that opened up in Texas and in Mexico. So we're back now, and there's still a lot of beautiful trees there, and we'd like to take care of them, even in the back. So that's why we care about the trees also in the back. That's why we didn't want to go too further back, and this way we can, there are a lot of old growth trees. On the east side of the building, we're quite a ways from the neighbors on Pinecrest, so I think they'll be quite happy. There'll be a fence, a big beautiful fence, as Trump would say, with a lot of trees, so we can enclose it. But as far as contamination, we have our lawyer here, Mr. Siegel, who's the best on the market when it comes to contamination. We spend a lot of money, and it's shown that there's nothing that's, I'll let him speak to it if you guys like, but there's nothing that's going outside the property. Everything's contained, and a lot of it is dissipated over the years. Any questions?
Through the chair, can I just ask a clarifying question on the trees to the north? Is there, between your property and the high school, is there an additional property owner, or do you own
Can you
to the
put
high
that,
school?
the map back on?
That,
Because there is a section, look like a separate
I think
property.
it's wrong. We own it all the way
All
up
the
to
way to-
up to the school, right butted to the school, and there's a fence right there.
But
So
the-
that red line is supposed to go all the way to the top.
But it's all your property.
Yes.
The project, the proposed project doesn't extend further
Past
back
my
than
current
the
building.
existing building?
Yes. So you
So the
basically, no trees are gonna,
Just remaining.
yeah, not one tree is gonna get cut. So the only problem is actually between our existing building and the new building, there's some really old trees over there. So we're trying to see if the builders could save them, because there will be a distance between the new building and the old building. They might be able to remain there. So, yeah.
Maybe you have a nice lunch area for your employees.
Yeah,
or
well, they got the whole property right now for lunch. Yeah,
what's the deer?
with and coyotes.
Yes.
Yeah,
Nice little habitat back
there's a
there.
lot, yeah. We planted a lot of wildflowers and it's just flies. There's so much of everything there. So it's, so nothing would be disturbed, and I plan to keep it that way. So we're taking some of our, remanufacturing products that we build, take used products, remanufacture it. And we're moving that to Warren City in a new facility. So this will probably, it's gonna be more clean warehousing, pick, pack, and ship operation.
Okay.
Right? Stage.
Any further questions from board members? Okay, our standard for granting a non-use variance under Michigan law. Practical difficulties exist that would stand in the way of carrying out the correct letter of the ordinance. That's MCL 125.3604 subsection 7. So when we are analyzing whether a variance here is appropriate, we are determining whether practical difficulties exist that would stand in the way of carrying out the strict letter. Strict letter of our ordinance, as we've discussed, has some newer requirements that are probably helpful requirements in most of our light industrial area. Application of them here, we have previously decided not for those same ordinance standards, but our other setback requirements that we had previously, we have decided not to strictly enforce them in similar situations. I want to open this one up to board members to discuss, starting with the build to line variances, the first two variances, the issue of practical difficulties with respect to the build to variance.
Through the chair, maybe that's a question to the owner or designer, is the buildings are planned to align and function as a set of buildings. So the functionality and in buildings like this, usually modularity of your operations, having certain base sizes and moving things through. So if it were to be pushed any further forward, it would be offset, and that might impact how they functionally use the space. So just, I guess, a question, would that mean anything to your functionality if you were to have to shift the building?
Definitely pull the loading area forward, probably into the connector, which will create a problem for the flow of his business.
Okay, so you're more functional with the proposed alignment of the buildings.
Absolutely.
Staggering the buildings would impact your operations.
You have a proposed retention pond in the front of one of those buildings. Can you talk about the purpose of the proposed retention pond and how, why that's sited where it is in the design?
I'm going to leave that up to my engineer. HRC is our engineer. So Matt Slicker is the lead engineer on this. Talk to more of the size and volume and stuff of that.
Hello, Matt Slicker. I'm with Hubbleroth and Clark, 555 Hewlett Drive, Bloomfield Hills, Michigan. The location of the pond was basically determined by the use of the property and what was available. As the owner said, just to the east of that pond are a lot of nice trees that we wanted to save, and this was an area that had been previously cleared and didn't really have a function at the time, and we were able to utilize it for the stormwater management. We could also put it on the backside. Again, there'd been more tree clearing there. So we were utilizing the property so as to maintain the natural features of the property as best we can.
So if you were to relocate the retention pond, it's likely that you would have to probably remove more trees.
Correct. Yes.
So, through the chair, can I ask additionally, is it correct, as in the rendering here for the pond, that there is not fencing required around the pond?
No, there's not fencing required around the pond. The slopes are flat enough so that they're not required.
It's a very shallow depression.
Yeah, well, it's going to be 5 to 6 feet deep of water when it rains. You know, on a 100-year rain event, it could get up to 6 feet deep. But, you know, majority of the time, it's just going to be a manicured lawn area.
Further discussion from board members or other points that people will want to raise relating to the first two variance requests for the variance on the build to line?
Through the chair, if not, I'd make a motion. We feel that we're ready, unless you had points.
I will make one final point if you're prepared to make a motion at this point, and the point I will make is that the BZA is a quasi-judicial body. Our prior decisions have at least some precedential impact. We have already and recently reviewed an issue very similar to this, and we granted a variance in that situation that was considerably larger than the variance requested. So from my perspective, I think that militates in favor of these variances on the build to issue. That's, of course, my personal opinion as a board member, but I want to introduce that into the discussion and for consideration by everyone. Unless there are any other points that anyone would like to make, I would entertain a motion if anyone would like to make a motion at this time.
Through the chair, I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals approve the dimensional variance. This is variance number 1. The application to allow variance of 139.25 feet from the required 0 to 15-foot primary frontage build-to line at 2000 West 8 Mile, Sidwell numbers listed in the motion in front of us. Would you like them read, or?
No.
Okay. After a public hearing was held and set and published for this date and place, the motion is accompanied by the following findings listed in the draft motion 1 through 6.
Right, motion is on the table to approve the first variance request of 139.25 feet off the build to line of 154.25 feet for the reasons set forth in our staff report and the proposed, with the proposed language in the staff report for the motion to approve. Is there any discussion by board members?
I have to second it first.
So
I'll second it.
we're going to do all four separate.
Yeah, we got to approve all of these separately. Have separate findings for each one of these.
Well, now after I second it, we can discuss. Done? Oh,
Yeah, in fact, we've done that before a lot of times. Before anyone supported, that's how we got supported.
okay.
But I appreciate that you're supporting it, because that means that we can actually also vote on it now.
Yes.
Without having to have someone else weigh in. So we have a motion, we have support for the motion. Now, if there's any more discussion, people are welcome to add more discussion. If not, let's do a roll call vote. Christine, please do a roll call vote, and if anyone would like to add additional reasoning for their vote, feel free to do so. It's always helpful if we have reasons underlying the decisions that we've made, and those reasons are on.
Levansky? Yes or no? Or abstain?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Palmer?
Yes, with explanation, because we had a precedent, it's really a lot easier for us to understand why we should vote yes.
Williamson?
I'm going to vote yes as well for the reasons discussed among the board, including that there would likely be practical difficulties in a redesign of the building that didn't allow the three similarly sized buildings to align the way they've been aligned in the plan, and for the reason that we have previously approved a similar variance in the past.
Lizinski?
Yes.
Azar?
Yes, with comment, dittoing Chair Williams and Palmer comments on the motion.
All right, that motion passes. We have granted the first variance request, and that means that if we move down the list, I would entertain a motion as to the second variance request on the build to line. And we're prepared to make a motion to approve or deny the second variance request, and/or does anyone have any other?
I'll move that the Board of Zoning Appeals approve the dimensional variance number 2, the variance application to allow variance of 129.85 feet from the required 0 to 15-foot secondary frontage build to line at 2000 West 8 Mile, Sidwell numbers listed in the draft motion. After a public hearing was held as set and published for this date and place, the motion is accompanied by the following findings 1 through 6 in our draft motion package.
All right, we have a motion by Azar. Any discussion and/or support on this motion?
I will support.
Support by Palmer. Hearing no further discussion, let's do a roll call vote.
Levansky?
Yes, with the comment that the variance helps preserve kind of a good atmosphere on Pinecrest.
Palmer?
Yes, and for the same reason I stated before.
Williamson?
Yes, and for the same reason stated previously with respect to variance number 1.
Lizinski?
Yes.
Azar?
Yes, with the same items listed for the previous variance.
Okay, that motion carries. The second variance request is granted for the build to line on the secondary frontage. That takes us to the third variance request, which is the request for a variance to allow surface parking between the building and the frontage. So, board members, do you have any discussion on the issue of parking between Pinecrest?
I do, just from the point of how the draft motion is written, because it says permit surface parking between the building and frontage, and it doesn't specifically say Pinecrest or accessory frontage, so I think the motion should include that clarification.
I agree.
Sure.
I agree. Generally speaking, we talked about the build to issue. Does anyone have any comments, questions, or discussions on the surface parking issue?
I think the way it's going to be done with landscaping is going to buffer it from the residential on the east side of Pinecrest as well as, you know, any pedestrian along Pinecrest. And I think that the parking won't even be seen.
Board Member Palmer?
Through the chair for discussion that it doesn't add traffic to Pinecrest, that it will be directed and exit from the main artery of 8 Mile.
That's a good point. Yeah, the curb cut isn't even on Pinecrest. There are any existing curb cuts on parking. So it's not likely to result in traffic issues on Pinecrest for that reason. I will also note that if you move up Pinecrest, the next parcel up north of this parcel is the school, which has surface parking in between the building and the road in that frontage all along each portion of the school all the way up to Marshall. So this is not going to damage the continuity of the streetscape along this west side of Pinecrest if this motion. Further discussion, or would someone like to make a motion?
Through the chair, I move that the Board of Zoning, this is on variance number 3, surface parking. I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals approve the dimensional variance application to permit surface parking between the building and frontage on 9 Mile. I'm sorry, on, here I go, on Pinecrest. For the building at 2000 West 8 Mile. Sidwell's numbers is listed in the draft motion. And after a public hearing was held as set and published for this date and place, the motion is accompanied by the following findings listed 1 through 6 in the draft motion.
All right, we have a motion on the table by Azar. Any discussion or support?
I'll support.
Supported by Palmer. Hearing no further discussion, Christine, let's do a roll call vote.
Levansky,
Yes.
Palmer,
Yes.
Williamson,
Yes, for the reasons previously stated.
Blazinski,
Yes.
Azar.
Yes.
Okay, that motion carries. The variance is granted for surface parking permitted between the building and the frontage. So that brings us to our last variance request, which is the issue of the 6 pedestrian entrances instead of, I think, 8 pedestrian entrances. Warehouse building. $75-foot requirement. Sure, Azar, you want to refresh all of our recollection as to the reasoning behind the 75-foot requirement as a planning commission member?
Through the chair, I think it helps break down the scale of a building as you're moving across it, and that way you're not getting big blank walls. So I think the intent was to bring a more pedestrian scale to it, and now it's a matter of functionality for this project, so it is less likely to apply.
Because this is actually not fronting on the actual sidewalk, so there's not going to be the same kind of pedestrian traffic that we don't.
So is it 6 per building or 6 total? 3 per building, so it's 6 total. Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, through the chair, they're on the hook for 8, and they're providing 3 per building.
Questions or additional discussion on this issue?
Through the chair. Quick question. Is it known yet where those doors will be?
Yes.
Two, three.
So this is just one section, so this is one of the phases, but I believe there's inner space throughout the building, so They're on the hook for one every 75 feet, so the site plan, the elevations will be updated to reflect that, you know, whatever the board approves. So if they are granted the variance of 2, then they will show 6, and the site plan will reflect that. But they are pretty evenly interspaced along the building. Yes.
Would our motion have to have a certain amount of footage, since it's not able to be 75 feet?
I don't believe so. I think last time around, it was just, that was the number that we arrived at. That's what we did for the last.
I want to make sure.
So any further discussion on this, or is anyone prepared to make a motion either way? Final variance request to reduce the number of required pedestrian entrances from 8 to 6.
I would make a motion with the recognition that this had a previous example on Wanda, you know, for a similar type building. So I will make a motion for variance number 4, pedestrian access. I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals approve the dimensional variant. Is it a dimensional variance? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a use variance, so
Okay. Approve, we'll keep it as written. Approve the dimensional variance application to allow a variance of 2 pedestrian entrances from the required 6 pedestrian entrances at 2000 West 8 Mile, Sidwell numbers listed in the draft motion. And after a public hearing was held as set and published for this date and place, the motion is accompanied by the following findings listed 1 through 6 in the draft motion in front of us.
we have a motion on the table by Commissioner Azar. Any discussion or support?
I'll support it.
Supported by Palmer. Hearing no further discussion, let's do a roll call vote on this one, Christine.
Levansky,
Yes.
Palmer,
Yes.
Williamson,
Yes, for the reasons previously discussed and because of the fact that we have previously granted a similar variance in a similar last 2 years.
Lizinski,
Yes.
Azar.
Yes.
Right, that one passes as well. That's the 4th and last variance. All variances are granted. Detroit Axle Team, congratulations and good luck advancing this project. We're happy to have you in the city.
Absolutely.
Looking forward to seeing the expansion. Right, that moves us to agenda item number 6, our administrative items. And we have on 6A, a zoning ordinance rewrite update.
Sorry, a lot of handshaking. Zoning ordinance rewrite, right? Okay. So we are still, thank you guys. We're still ongoing with this process. We have a draft. I believe I did email it out to, or Christine rather, emailed it out to the board for your review. Our next big moment is October 2nd. We are having a open house at Incubizo, which is at, Christine, do you have the address?
Esther.
1938 for debt. So we're having an open house there on the 2nd from 5 to 6:30, just a way for the public to come and chat with us about the ordinance if they so choose. So staff will be there. We've invited other boards and commissions just to be there as well. We do have a joint planning commission and city council meeting later that night, also October 2nd at 7 p.m. So that's going to be more of a traditional meeting, just as a way for us all to discuss it together and include public comments and things like that. So based on the results of how that goes and the feedback we get and the direction we get from Planning Commission, from City Council, there might be more modifications to the draft. And then once the draft is fully complete, we go through the approval process. There are, public hearings before the planning commission and also the city council. I think there's a first and second reading at the city council. So we hope to wrap this up in the next few months.
At 5:30 on the 2nd?
It's from 5 to 6:30.
5 to 6.
So it's more of an open house. There's not a specific start time that you have to be there. It's a little more flexible. The other thing I want to plug is zoneferndale.com. So that's the website. If you go there, there's a green participate button. You click on that and it takes you to the draft. There's also ways to provide contact, feedback if you so choose.
Great, thank you. Any questions from board members? Right, that takes us to agenda item number 7, board items. I don't believe we have any board items other than the introduction of our new board member, which we've already done. Does anyone else have any board items that they would like to raise?
Should we be at that meeting of the joint council and planning commission?
If you'd like to, absolutely, you're more than invited.
But I'm saying, in the last time we got together, I felt like we were just like sitting in the background. I don't think that we were even approached on anything, so I just wanted to make sure.
Well, not only is it a public meeting, but, we would
Yes, it is.
like the BZA's involvement for sure. So even outside of that meeting, if you have any comments or feedback, of course, specifically for the BZA section in the ordinance, but also anything outside of it, just in your own opinion as a Ferndale resident, absolutely, we will take the feedback.
Yeah, I'd say that the issue has really been, if anything, not enough feedback. Typical. I was a member of the zoning rewrite committee. There was some pretty active and robust efforts to collect feedback from the community, which it wasn't terrible. We had some events set up around the city where people could come in and give ideas and give their thoughts on different things. Translating that into an actual change in the ordinance has its challenges, especially when we have a city that has a lot of different viewpoints. And but to the extent that there is feedback, particularly I think by members of the BZA, since we're the ones who are actually interpreting the language of the ordinance, we're the ones that have to actually apply it. To the extent that anyone has any thoughts or ideas about the proposed language, if you look at the proposed language and you see or foresee issues applying that language, or if it reminds you of issues that we've had in the past where things have come before us, where we could use some more clarification, I think that would be very helpful, especially during this period where we're trying to finalize everything in the language before the ordinance actually gets adopted. In fact, the comment that you made earlier, Judy, made me think that that's probably something that we could address in the ordinance. The fact that we have this parking requirement, but we don't really specify, does it apply to the primary frontage, does it apply to the secondary frontage, does it apply to both? We're conservatively interpreting it today that it applies to all the frontages. Is that really the intent? We do need to clarify things like that.
I think there's a lot of different shapes and sizes of parcels. And if you look at a frontage, like I'm just going to suggest Vester having all that new stuff coming in, and yet there's really no, even if it is a side, it's a alley. Is that another frontage because it's on an alley? I don't know.
I think in that case it's not, but I could be wrong on that, especially when you think about the shop that has then the vacant lot behind it. It seems like a frontage.
Right. That's why,
Yeah,
that's what I was thinking.
Well, I just want to say to staff that I really appreciated the email coming from Christine letting us know the draft is published and letting us know about the events. I think that's something we made really clear in the past, that we wanted to know when things were happening. So I really appreciated the email. I think you've given us plenty of time to take the time to review that before you're having those planning commission and city council reads. So I do really appreciate that. I intend to read through it, and if I have any feedback, I'll provide that. I did send it also around to some people I think may be interested, hoping to just help get some good feedback. And the only question I had is if do you have particular months in mind that you're targeting planning commission and city council, or is that just in flux?
It's still in flux. I mean, all these have public notice requirements, so whatever we got to do, it's with the public notice timeline and the timeline we have to get stuff into the newspaper. You know, we have to be ready to go 3 to 4 weeks prior to the meeting. So, you know, I will say as soon as we can in the next couple of months, but I'm hesitant to pick months right now.
Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, staff. Thank you, board members. And takes us to the end of our agenda. We have no further items, so we will adjourn at 8:13 p.m.
Actually, with 4 things to consider, an hour and 15